saw Raise at Tribeca Film Festival.
Yes.
And it was intense, and I loved it.
Oh, good. Phew.
Can you tell me a little bit about how you got involved with the project and where it all started?
Yeah. Basically, Josh Waller, who's the director, and I have been friends for years and years and years. And he just rang me up one day and said that he was in meetings with a couple of guys about this concept that they had that was so far it was written as a short, but they were throwing around ideas of it maybe being a web series or a feature or a TV show or something, and that he considered me right for the project and would I come in and meet these guys? And I said absolutely, so I went in and met with them. And it just, through back and forth conversation, that the concept sounded really interesting, and the energy these guys had together, I was like, I'd like to be a part of that, and then when they brought up the possibility of producing, a fire was lit inside me, and I was like, yes, I would like to be a part of the creative process, and I'd like to be involved from the beginning through to the end. And so I said yes, and we sort of started this thing as a little baby project, and it sort of, I guess we were feeding it too much, and it started growing and growing, and we were like, right, we need diapers, oh my god, we need clothes, we need a bassinet, we suddenly, so it all just sort of snowballed. Not to make it sound like it was an easy, like it just happened process. It was definitely hard work. I mean, it's a lot. To make a movie is a lot. So to anybody out there that's finished a movie, I applaud you. Like, that's just a lot of hard work.
Was it your first time producing?
My first time producing, yeah.
Okay, would you do it again?
I'd love to. I plan to, yes.
Well, you have a pretty amazing cast that you guys put together with Rachel Nichols and Tracy Thoms and Doug Jones, who is a favorite of our website, Whedonopolis.
I just feel like anybody who knows Doug, he's a favorite of. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's hard to not just love Doug.
So how did you pull this cast together?
It was a combination. I mean, it was just the way we pulled everything together, really. It was sort of going to friends and people we knew. When I first went to Tracy, I was like, Tracy, I'm producing this movie, and she was like, I'm in. I was like, you should definitely read the script before you say yes, because it's a very specific. She was like, but wait, you're in it, right? And I was like, yeah, I'm the lead. She's like, I'm in. I was like, please read the script. She was like, all right, I'll read the script, but I'm in. She read the script. She was like, wow, I'm in. I was like, cool. Rachel Nichols is a dear friend of Josh's. Doug Jones, obviously, we'd worked together on Angel of Death before, and I think Josh also knows Doug. Rosario Dawson was like a surprise present for me that was organised by Tracy and Rosario and Josh. I had no idea until she walked on set, and I was in full producer mode, like, we need this person, we need a casting for the blah blah blah, and they were like, we've got her, and I was like, why wasn't I consulted about that? And then walks Rosario, and I was like, woo! And we were like, so me, Tracy, and Rosario had a little reunion and a bit of a cry. And then Sherilyn Finn, that was all Josh. He was just like, she's such a brilliant symbol of, we were just like, to have her in this movie would be amazing, and she kicks its ass. And we did that, like, Rebecca is a dear friend of Josh's, so it was all just pulling friends, that wanted to come on board.
It's good to have talented friends.
It is good to have talented friends, and it feels really nice to have your talented friends have faith in you too, That was like, I mean, it meant the world to me that Rosario came on. It meant the world to me that Tracy was like, I don't care what it is, I want to play with you. I was just like, aw, shucks. Yeah.
Well, as I said, it's a really intense role, and it's basically also, in addition to the intensity of the emotion, it's wall-to-wall stunts.
Yeah.
I mean, how was it for you balancing that?
It was exhausting because we were working, 6-day weeks, really long, full days. I think there's two sides of it. I think one it was exhausting because of what was required. Just speaking about me, I mean, I think any of the actresses will speak to this and talk about how grueling it was for them. Being an actor and a producer meant that even when I wasn't in front of the camera, I would turn up on days that I wasn't on the call sheet because it's my movie.
Were you ever not on the
I think there was like 3 days out of a 30-day shoot that I was not on the call. I took one day off because I was ruined. I was like, I'm just going to keep crying today if you don't send me home, and I don't even know why. It's just going to keep happening. But the other thing I think that's brilliant about it is I think we all got to a place where we were just using it. So when the cameras weren't rolling, actually we were all cracking up laughing and making it being really ridiculous because we had to keep the energy up. But just all the fight scenes and all the physical activity and exertion, I think, just fed into the performances that we had to pull from as well. You know, like I wasn't faking it when I slid down the wall. You know, like I was feeling that. You know.
Well, you're a very accomplished stunt person. How is it doing stunts with someone who's like kind of a newbie to this kind of choreographed fighting, or somebody who's kind of, or maybe somebody who's not exactly very physically inclined to be able to do this sort of thing? How is that?
Well, to be honest, that was always, it's normal for me because, you know, the first however many years of my career as a double, part of my job was to fight opposite actors that weren't stunt people, but they were playing the role of someone who fights. So my job was to make them feel comfortable, keep them safe, and to make them look as badass as possible. So it's in my nature to do that. That's how I work, is to give the other person something to work off of. So I was really accustomed to it. Plus the cast that we had, all, whether they're athletes from when they were younger or not, or fighters from in the past or not, they were all super dedicated, and they all put themselves through either their personal training, or we had about 3 weeks of unpaid, because we couldn't afford it, rehearsal time, where they would come in and train with our stunt coordinator and fight coordinator. So they were all super dedicated. So it was actually, for us, thank God for us, because when you're on a tight schedule, you need people that are going to either not screw up the choreography, or if they do, they can keep going. Just run through it and carry on, you know, because that's my job too. If you screw it up, I make it look like you got it right, and we keep going. Keep going. Don't cut unless we need to cut, you know. If safety's involved, we cut. Otherwise, keep going, because there might be something we can use, you know.
Well, yeah, I guess that would be pretty exhausting.
It is. It's exhausting. Yeah. It's really exhausting. And the thing that's more exhausting is, you know, you do fight training. So you're practicing like 5, 6, 7, 8, and then there's the 1, 2, blah, blah, and you can do that all day long, and it's tiring. But the minute you're like crying, and you've got to be all, you know, at the end of that, just crying is exhausting. You know yourself, even if you're not acting. If you cry for 2 hours, at the end you're like, oh my God, I'm tired, you know. So if you're crying and bringing all this emotion and fighting, is like after 20 minutes you're like, oh my God, can I have a whiskey? I know it's 7 a.m., but I would love a whiskey right now.
I know, because your body doesn't know, I mean, that you're acting. It just knows that
you're
bringing up
if you make it real enough, you're affected that way, you know. It's like...
Okay, well, I mean, you've done a lot of stunt work.
Yes.
Now you've added acting into it. What do you prefer, the acting or the stunts?
It's not a preference question, really, because it's not sort of like chocolate and vanilla for me. It's sort of an extension of each other. And I've always loved performing, and I loved being a stunt woman, and I loved doing stunts. I'm a little older now, so I much more prefer doing the fun, cool looking stuff rather than the, I don't know what am I allowed to say the S word? Sure. Rather than doing the eat shit stuff that just hurts repeatedly. You know, I'm sort of like, I'm okay if there's an 18-year-old girl who's like, I want to do it. I'm like, go for it. Go for your life. I'll sit here and have a coffee. That's okay, baby. But the acting thing, I think, has also been, it feels sort of like a natural progression. I don't feel like I'm choosing one or the other. It feels like it's progressing into the acting thing. And, you know, it's also, if I had kids at some point, I don't know that I want to be saying, bye, children, hopefully I'm not going to die when I jump off this train today, and I'll see you at home for dinner. You know, it's sort of like, I don't know. It just feels sort of like that's, like I think my acting is only what it is. I mean, I've worked really hard since starting acting, but a huge amount of that has come from performing and being in front of cameras and being on set. And so there's not really a preference. It's just sort of a, I'm just working. The other thing is I'm working really hard to be taken seriously as an actor, so it kind of means I've had to leave stunts behind, in the sense that I have to train the world and myself to see me and feel comfortable with me as an actor instead of just being Tarantino's stunt girl, because it's really hard to break out of those boxes. It's sort of, and it's not a box that I'm anything other than proud of. I'm stoked to be a stunt woman. I'm stoked to be Tarantino's stunt girl, but it's sort of, in order to move to the next place, I kind of have to separate a little bit, you know.
Everybody's got different sides, and you want people to be able to see.
Yeah, exactly. So I need to push that side more so that they see it, you know.
Right.
It's an interesting transition. It's difficult. I'm working really hard.
Yeah. Well, speaking of kind of boxes, and I mean, being a woman in the stunt world and acting world is really difficult. Can you talk a little bit about how you kind of broke down some of those barriers?
Yeah, I mean, I've been very fortunate in loads of ways, and one of the ways that I was very fortunate is my stunt career started in New Zealand, and New Zealand was quite a young industry, and Xena was where I started, and Xena was a huge part of the New Zealand industry for a long, long time. So straight off the bat, you had female action roles being the staple, you know what I mean? They were the staple part of, it was completely normal that we have stunt women and stunt men. The difference being, we had maybe 5 or 6 women that were working regularly and 20 guys that were working regularly, because you'd have the bad guys and the villagers, and most of those were filled with males. But I never witnessed myself having to work any harder for respect. And when I first started in New Zealand, it was, if you work really hard and you treat people good, it's such bad English, my mum would kill me for that. If you treat people well, sorry mum, if you work really hard, you treat people well, and you are talented, then there's no reason to be treated any differently. So it never occurred to me until I got here that I would be treated anything other than what I deserved based on my work. And most of the time here, and I think because I had that attitude when I got to the States, I didn't walk in like, I have to prove myself, or please like me, or please respect me. I walked in like, yo, here's my shit. What do you reckon? Do you want me to do it different? What do you think? You know, so I think a lot of how you're treated depends on where you stand and how you expect to be treated. And, you know, I didn't walk out there being like, I'm a woman, respect me. Because that's threatening and uncomfortable. I mean, I'd be uncomfortable if a man was like, I'm a man, respect me. I'd be like, hell no, you know. So I think there's a huge part of that. Now, I did come across sort of more the slightly more old school guys from the cowboy era that were more like, it upset them to see women hurt. You know, one guy was like, I don't want you to do a fire burn. And I was like, what are you talking about? I've done heaps of fire burns. They're like, what if I burn your face? And I was like, that's not a place of sexism. That's like a place of, it's old school chivalry. Yeah, that's like, do you want to kill that? I kind of like a little bit of that's kind of nice.
Yeah.
And then I came across some straight up sexism, and that's not nice. And that is, I found it hard to deal with because it was so new to me and so unexpected that I was like, wait, why am I feeling angry right now? It took me 3 days to understand that I was being put in a corner. Like, we teach you how to use the sword today. I was like, oh, you're being sexist. That's really uncomfortable. I don't like that. You know, I've had a sword in my hand since I was 19. Like, I got to utilize me, you know. Yeah. That took a little while to figure out how to be diplomatic so that I wasn't. Because you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot and be like, hey, blah, blah, and then they don't want to work with you, you know. Yeah. So it has been interesting, but I really do believe at the end of the day, if you're good and you treat people right and you work hard, why wouldn't people want to hire you for anything, you know?
Well, I mean, you've definitely been hired a lot. So you've got a pretty extensive background in television and film. What's the big difference between doing stunts in television and doing them in film?
Anything, stunts and acting, same thing. The differences that I'm aware of in film and television, obviously, well, used to be budget, but you know, TV's got a big budget these days, and there's a lot of low budget films. So, but generally speaking, it's just the time. Like TV, it's the turnover. You know, like on Kill Bill. I remember when we first did Kill Bill, and we had like a week to shoot this fight, and I was like, how are we going to fill a week with, you know, because on Xena, we'd shoot 3 fights in a day. Yeah. And and then as we shot it, I was like, oh, okay, now we're getting the reactions of all of these guys, and we've got all these shots, and we can get wides, and we can get, and it's film, so it requires that, Plus the sets are that much bigger, and everything's, so resets take time, and, so most of it's that for me, and I think training in TV was really helpful. Because when I get to film, the only thing that I wasn't used to dealing with was sitting around. Yeah. So then that's not a hard thing to get good at. I'm like, right, where's the craft service table? I could do this all day long, But mostly those seem to be the most obvious. Same with acting, like dialogue. You've got a week to figure it out before the next week, if it's going episode to episode, as opposed to you've got this full script and you've got it for 3 months to play around with, and then you do the whole piece,
So, what was your most challenging stunt, and what was your most challenging acting?
Yeah, okay, I'll try and keep it like it's an interview answer as opposed to like we're hanging out having wines, because I'll talk about it for hours, but challenging stunts are different for so many different reasons. There's sort of like the high fall on Catwoman was challenging because it was 200 and something feet, so that's like a mental challenge. The ironically, the death proof chase sequence wasn't so much of a challenge as much as it was exciting to see how far we could push it and figure out how to do it so it looked terrifying whilst not actually being life risking, Yeah. But for me, one of the most challenging moments I had was way back on Xena. I'd broken my toe in the morning running up the stairs to go to the toilet. Very embarrassing. Turned up to set at 7 o'clock in the morning with like a crooked toe, big fat foot, and we had to like put it back and strap it and shove it in my boot. And the whole day was just an entire fight scene of flipping and being wires and tumbling, doing gymnastic stuff and fighting, and just the mental challenge of just like ignoring pain for an entire day was, at the end of the day I was like, I don't want to take the boot off. Don't touch the boot. I'm going to sleep with the boot on. I'm just like, if we take it off, I think it's going to hurt. But those, and then there's the challenging, like the intricate ones, when you've got a bunch of different moving objects and you've got a bunch of different people that are involved, and of those I've done plenty. There was another one on Xena when I was spinning and I was on fire, and we had to figure out how to get me to spin horizontally and move this way, and it was that required a lot of teamwork, but those are my favorite. I love when you have to figure something. I love the problem solving. That's one of my most exciting things. As far as acting challenging, technically Death Proof was, because it was my first time doing it, but I was flanked by Rosario and Tracy, and I had Quentin calling the shots. I'm like, it was challenging, but I think I just didn't notice. I was just like, I'm just doing what you're telling me to do, and I'm bouncing off you, and I'm bouncing off you, and Angel of Death was challenging because it was my first real leading role where it was all on me, and I was playing a character that was nowhere close to me, zero emotion. Clearly that's not me. An assassin, I've never done that in my personal time, I promise. And then definitely Ray's. Ray's was by far the most important. Like, I felt a shift in my acting after Ray's, like noticeable. She is not me, and her journey is harrowing and hideous and heavy. And also, I think because I was a producer, and so therefore there was a whole crew of people that were responsible to me. I was responsible to them to be as committed as possible to make this as good as I possibly could, so as not to let all these people down. That's how it was feeling to me. So yeah, and I really, look at that commitment. Angry face. That was just getting up in the morning. No, I'm kidding.
So, what's next for Zoe Bell?
There's a couple of things. I did a little indie movie called Douglas Brown that's sort of about to start doing the festival circuit. There's another horror indie that my friend's a producer of, so I came on board for that. It's called Freshwater. I'm an alligator expert in it. I'd just like to tell you that was pretty fun. And then Ray's comes out in theatres. We're release date January 10, so it's all about Ray's for me at the moment. Yeah, I'm sort of lots of festivals.
Who's releasing it?
I am IFC Midnight, which we're stoked about. It's such a perfect kind of, IFC is just such a highly respectable institute, and to have it be the midnight is just like, of course,
Yeah.
we were so excited when it was like, we're like, yes, those are the perfect people to get into bed with, so to speak.
It's going to be on video on demand as well.
Yeah. Yeah. All over the show.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I recommend everyone check it out.
I do too.
It's amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.